I'm Andrew Willett for A Pro Basketball Show. Follow and subscribe on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, and Spotify, as well as following on social media at APBShow on Twitter and Instagram. Be sure to follow me as well at TheACWillett22. Thank you so much for tuning in, and without further ado, hello and welcome to A Pro Basketball Show. I am so excited now to be joined by Kayla Dose, covering women's hoops for at WNBA Lead, a contributor there. And I mean it's been so long that we've been trying to plan this podcast, and it's unfortunate the circumstances that it is under for the Connecticut Sun with the recent news. But nonetheless, talking about one of the hottest teams in the WNBA today, a team that I've been high on from the very start. I mean, you lose a Jonquel Jones, it doesn't look great, but I had them fourth coming into the season. I'll take my victory laps there. But I mean, they're proved me right so far. It's been a lot of fun up until the recent news. Kayla, thank you so much for taking the time. I know you've been really busy, but I really appreciate you coming on. How are you doing?
Hey Andrew, I am wonderful. Thank you very much for asking me to come on. And like you said, I'm glad we were finally able to get this set up. I know it's been a long time coming. Um, so I'm a little depressed that we are going to be talking about what we're going to be talking about, but someone's got to do it. So
Someone started. It's unfortunate. Like, you like talking about the WNBA. This is the part that you don't love to talk about, and it was just terrible news for a team in Connecticut who really, after the start that we saw this season, we thought maybe they can go compete with the likes of those super teams in New York, in Las Vegas. And I guess she goes down in that Seattle game as Connecticut, one of the best teams in the W. Torn Achilles, out for the rest of the year. Before we touch on this squad, just obviously the same thing I was talking about in my Washington Mystics in-season breakdown just a bit earlier was like Shakira Austin. This is a huge loss for this team. Obviously, this is much more dire with an out for the entire season for Bree Jones. How crucial is that to the Connecticut Sun?
it's huge, especially just when you consider the lack of depth they have there at that position. Um, it's really going to be interesting to see kind of how what they do now, and I think we've kind of seen it. They're decided to go a little bit smaller, try to play a little quicker, try to spread the floor a little more with Beck Allen in the starting lineup. I think a lot of people might have just assumed that Nelson Nadota was just going to slot right in there. Um,
Hmm.
but Steph White has touched on that they want to try to just play a little faster, and I think it's worked decently well with Allen in there. But yeah, I mean it's just really heartbreaking for Jones, who's having another great season. I mean, she and especially sucks when you consider that she took a pay cut to come back to play with Connecticut, to stay with that core that she's been with. I think she loves the organization and loves the people in the organization. She was willing to take less money when she probably could have got a supermax, probably in Minnesota or somewhere else. So it's really just heartbreaking for her, and honestly for Sun fans all over because now this is we had the COVID year, JJ was down, then 2021, AT ruptured the Achilles, then last year, obviously, with Jasmine Thomas and the ACL. So this is just another blow in the life of a Connecticut basketball fan.
Seems to be year after year. I know,
Yeah.
like the preview, I had Brendan Glasheen on. I talked about it on the last podcast when I talked about what had been going on in the W. Like year after year after year, this happens to Connecticut, one of the winningest teams over the last 5, 6 years in the W, and they just can't seem to get past that injury bug and over the top. But I think for right now, Kayla, we're going to take some time and we're going to touch on some of the brighter subjects with Connecticut before talking about this injury and what it means for the Sun. We'll talk about how they have been so successful so far this season because, I mean, this is a team in my podcast with Brendan Glasheen. I just gushed about Connecticut. I love their scheme defensively. I think they've got a lot of versatile defenders there. And then offensively, I mean, I saw it in the first couple of games against Washington. It's kind of died off a little bit, but they were getting out and moving the basketball, a lot more pace. I think we could see more of that. But Kayla, for you, as this team, I believe, sits in third place now. They were in second for the longest time. What has made this team so successful?
Well, I think Alyssa Thomas has been a big part of it, right? I mean, she's having an incredible season. She just really does everything, a little bit of everything. So I think she's just been phenomenal. I mean, I don't know that you really could put it into any other words. I think they've been pretty solid defensively. I think they're third or fourth in defensive rating this year, right now. Um, so that's been great. I love them in transition. They between AT and Dijonay, um, they really and even Heidemann I think has been doing a pretty decent job. Uh, they've been they've been really fun to watch in transition. And I like that they've been getting to the free throw line a lot as well, even though it might be a little counterproductive because they haven't been shooting it all that well from the free throw line. But they're still getting there, which is good.
Yeah, and I think that's good, especially because I mean you can look at it and say, hey, they're leaving some points on the table here. They could be doing a little bit more to add on to that offense. I
And a
know
lot of that does come with AT's shoulder issues. She's taken a lot of those free throws, and with her, uh, limitations there. So we'll give them a bit of a pass there.
that's pretty fair. I think I'm trying to decide where I want to go to first here between Dewana Bonner and Alyssa Thomas. I mean, those two are just awesome. You
Delani has been, I mean, I will admit, in the past, I've been hard on Duana, um, just because I feel like she has had a few games, like playoff games, where she's just not there, like stat wise. You know what I mean? Um, but she's really, I mean, she's having an all-star year. I think if you know what I mean? Like she's been so good. There was obviously the 40-point game, which was crazy. Um, she's been great, and I also noticed I started noticing it last year, but once I was in the post game pressers and whatnot. But she's such a good veteran presence, I think, for this team. I think all of them really look up to her and AT too. But even she's talked about how Dijonay is like she called her little project. And Dijonay said, like, yeah, like she like took me under her wing when I got drafted. And so
that's
it's been
awesome.
great to see her kind of be that voice in the locker room. Um, that's what all the coaches have always said about her and the players too. So that's been great too.
But no, I mean that's just such an underrated presence because we're talking about the basketball at first that she's been playing this year. It's at an all-star level. I'm doing an all-star episode here soon. Like she's going to be one of my all-star reserves that I hope gets selected here soon. But doing all this on the floor, I know she said in interviews, I think Stephanie White has mentioned it, but like DeWanna Bonner doing things and learning things that she hadn't done prior. And she's a 35-year-old, 13-year veteran in the W. So just adding all of these things to her game, along with that locker room presence that you just mentioned. I really didn't know that much about the Dijonay relationship. That's really cool to hear about and get some insight on. Um, but yeah, no, Dewana Bonner, really fun, really cool. Alyssa Thomas, you mentioned her already, but I'm gonna go on my little Alyssa Thomas
Go
rant
for
here
it.
because I'm telling you what, ever since maybe game 3 of this season, I was like, I made the wrong call in the preseason MVP pick. Alyssa Thomas is my MVP for this season. I love what she does on both sides of the court. Early on, I was seeing her pushing the ball, and I mean she does it scoring, passing, rebounding, the triple doubles are off the chart. That's what everybody loves to see. It's garnering a lot of headlines. But like, I think the stats are three triple doubles in 4 games, back to back triple doubles,
Yep.
5 career in the regular season, 7 all time out of like 23 in W history, which is the most. So I mean, Alyssa Thomas, there's all of that, but I also love what she brings, like as an engine to this team defensively. I think she's been my defensive player of the year since the preseason too. I just thought she was so impressive in the playoffs last year when I was watching, leading the league in steals per game at 2.1. So everything she does on that end to push into the offense, I mean, that's my Alyssa Thomas rant. I like she's doing all that without a jump shot, but
Absolutely.
so high on her.
It's crazy what she does, just the way she does it and how she has to adapt everything. It's so
Yes.
unconventional, but it's really, really fun to watch. That pass she had the other night to Dijonay, I had like such a good view of it from where I was sitting. It was just like watching it. I think at the end, my jaw was like my mouth was open because I was just like, wow. Um, it was it was crazy. I just feel like we don't see things like that a lot in this league. She's really special.
And have a little bit of all-star conversation. She should have been a starter, right?
Yeah, I agree. And I'm not going to get up in arms about it because I get how it works with the fan voting and how that's incorporated. And the Sun don't have the fan base that like the Aces have or some of the other teams. So I get it. I understand why, even though I don't agree, but absolutely. And I don't really think there's anyone that would disagree with that.
Yeah, good point. Good point. Yeah, huge on Alyssa Thomas over here.
Yep.
Um, MVP, Defensive Player of the Year, definite All Star as we move forward. Looking into some more Connecticut stuff, I want to start. We're gonna do like offense defense here
Sure.
at first. But I talked a lot in the last podcast about how much I love Connecticut's offense. I think when I start to look at it, they run a lot of sort of different actions that you wouldn't see from a traditional offense, where like Bree Jones would screen for Alyssa Thomas coming off of a screen, or the guard would screen for Alyssa Thomas as the ball handler. That I think their horns actions where they'll have the two bids on the elbows and they have so much stuff that can come out of that. I nerd out over Connecticut's offense. I think where we saw them get in trouble, at least from my vantage point, I really watched in depth that Las Vegas game, the first one,
Hmm.
where I think Las Vegas did a really good job of like mucking up the offense by staying in the paint as
Hmm.
well as pressuring the basketball. And I think that does leave some open spaces to attack, but that's a little tough for Connecticut to do given the roster that they have. Nonetheless, I mean, if I go to some numbers over here, they are fourth in offense, actually behind the Indiana Fever, which shocked me. But third in assists, I think fourth in true shooting percentage, and third in turnover percentage. So a lot of these numbers, they're on the upper half of the league, and so even despite the issues I just brought up, they did it done at such a high mark. Why are they able to do so?
I don't know. I think a lot of it comes down to what Alyssa Thomas is doing. Number one, I think she's just off those actions that you're talking about. Um, I just think she sees the floor so well, and she's able to kind of put her teammates in good position. Um, and
I,
it is crazy what you were saying because I think when Jones was playing, mucking it up in the paint, I feel like would have been the strategy. Um, because the Sun really hadn't been shooting the ball all that well from three. Like it
mm-hmm.
was, the shots just weren't falling. Heidemann hasn't really shot it that well this year. Really, Duana, I would say, is the only one that's really been kind of keeping them afloat out there. Um, but so that I would guess would be one of the ways that teams would be looking to kind of defend them. Um, and I think, like you said, it did kind of get to them a little bit in that Aces game. Um, but I think so far this year, it's really just been Alyssa Thomas and Duana Bonner. I think that's why they've been able to be so successful in what they do. Um, and I really like what Stephanie White has kind of brought in with those different actions and just the way they. I mean, they've always been, even with Kurt. We know Kurt loved his defense and whatnot. So I don't know that that has changed all that much, but that defensive intensity is really still there, and they definitely bother some folks out there on the both with Thomas and even I think Heidemann I think has played okay defense. I think that she's looked the worst against New York for some reason.
It's pretty good offensive yards out there.
Defensively, yeah, defensively, right. But other than that, I think she's been solid. I think Tiffany Hayes does a great job as well. So I think the identity of them has kind of stayed the same in that defensive piece of it. But then just AT, I think, has kind of taken over the ship. Maybe now, could that be because Jonquil left and now it's like, okay, there's no more. That's like the conspiracy, right? Is that over the last couple of years, it's been this, oh, whose team is it kind of issue. Nobody knew whether or not that's true. I don't know, but certainly could have been, and maybe that was the issue all along. But now it seems that everyone knows, okay, this is AT. AT's going to do what AT's going to do, and it's been working so far.
Yeah, I mean, you talked as I started that with offense, and you just talked about kind of what she's been able to do, uh, getting into the lane off of those sets, and I think she's just so forceful when she's out there leading
Mhm.
this team. Has been awesome. The 3 point shot, like you mentioned, they're actually fifth in the league in 3 point percentage. A lot of that can probably come down to Dewana
And
Bonner.
I want to say, I don't know this for sure, but I want to say this last game against New York might have, I think, was one of their better games. I'm pretty sure. I want to say they were like 30, like high 30s, I think, or like 35%. I want to say that was one of their better games of the season thus far. So, which, I mean, that's kind of the game plan and what Coach White has been wanting to do with adding Allen to the lineup. And they're probably going to, without Bree, they're going to be shooting the ball more. So, you know, the logic would say that more, they're going to make more because they're going to shoot more, you would hope.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, to this point in the season, 11th in 3 pointers attempted. So I think that probably is kind of a transition point here, even for us, where they're going to be shooting more threes without a Bree Jones in the lineup. And they hit a decent rate of them. They hit the free throw line a lot. They don't hit a decent rate of those, as we mentioned off the top. Um, and then I just wanted to touch real quickly on the defense that you mentioned. Third in defensive rating. And I think this is part of the reason I almost, in a sense, fell in love with what Connecticut does. Is they have these forwards who are really versatile and switchable. And I think Tiffany Hayes does a great job there. Dewana Bonner and Dejanay Carrington coming in and playing some really good defensive minutes. And then the bigs down low. Alyssa Thomas, obviously the most versatile. Olivia Nelson-Ododa, and at one point, Bree Jones. So moving forward from there, do you have any concerns about the defense without a Bree Jones down there? We talked about how that could help the offense, but like defensively, that's a big body in the
It is.
lane and
It is.
rebounding too. Sorry.
Right. No, no. So I think it obviously is worst case scenario when you're playing teams like New York and like Vegas that have these like all star, all world bigs, you know what I mean? And we kind of saw that exposed on Tuesday night. I mean, Brianna Stewart kind of just got whatever she wanted because Dewana Bonner was guarding her the majority of the time, and Dewana Bonner,
It's Bruce
that's not
Stewart.
really a good
There's
matchup
not
for
much.
her. Just you know what I mean? It's just not. Um, so when you're playing teams like that, it's it's going to get exposed. I will say that in terms of like rim protection, I don't think Jones was really bringing too much. She doesn't really average too many block shots or anything like that. Beck Allen does. Like, she with those long arms that are like her wingspan. I don't even know what it is, but her arms just seem like they go forever. Um, so that's been nice to see. But just you can't like replace size. You know what I mean? You just can't.
Yeah.
You could be a really good player, but if you're not 6'5", it's going to be hard for you to guard Asia Wilson or Brianna Stewart. Um, so it's really hard, and I think they'll be okay with against a lot of the teams still in the league, um, but not the top two. So
Yeah.
at the end of the day, those are the teams you got to beat to win it all. So especially over the course of a 5-game series, it's a tough ask for Bonner and even AT. I mean, I know AT is great, but again, it's hard to guard. I mean, who's going to guard Asia Wilson on Saturday? You know what I mean? It's going to be tough. So,
And that really is the main question that you come to with this Connecticut team. Even before this injury, it was looking a lot better
yep.
before that injury. I think though, uh, we kind of talked about all of the talent they have to guard on that end. Is there or are there candidates or options that you would have liked to see fill in a hardship contract for Connecticut, replacing Bree Jones?
Anyone that's available,
It
I
was
don't
really
know.
tough to.
Yeah, I really don't know that there's anyone available. I would have loved if they somehow could have gotten Hanshu in that trade. That would have been ideal. Instead, New York just got to keep all their players and got players in
Yeah.
the trade. But anyways, um, yeah, I really don't know that there. I think if anything is going to happen, it might have to be by way of a trade.
Agreed.
You know what I mean? Because
You would have loved to see a Kalani Brown.
that's literally what I
Uh
said.
huh.
One like a trade for. I literally said Kalani Brown. Um, but someone like that because you can go get like even Liz Dixon who is on the bench, big body, but is she gonna play? No. Okay, so I don't know. Maybe there's something we can do there. You know what I mean? Whether it's to, you know, waive or release her, even Leah Brown, to open up some room. But I think they would only be able to afford like a minimum contract anyways. So I don't know that there's really anyone that would be impactful enough to the level that they need.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
have a feeling they're just gonna run with what they got and try to make it work, honestly.
That's very fair because there are some options there. I'm going to run through a couple of. I mean, like you mentioned Hanshu, which is
Mhm.
one of the lone bids, I think, in the league where it's like she's probably not getting the time that she would really like or that she could probably step into. I think about. I'm blanking on the center out in Atlanta, but Kalani Brown in Dallas, I think, would have been an
Dan
amazing
Parker, are
fit.
you talking about?
No, I hasn't been playing much for Atlanta. Cheyenne Parker, I don't think Atlanta would give
Oh,
up
that's
for.
why I was like, hmm. Um,
But I go around the league and I'm just not sure where that comes from. I know I listened to another podcast. It was WNBA Nation, where
mhm,
those guys brought up like Monica Shizano,
mhm.
Shinano, excuse me, and as well as but drafted by Indiana, played for LSU. Um,
So,
LaDeja
William,
Williams.
yeah, mhm.
And so like a few options like that, but I don't think anywhere near that is going to make up for a,
Exactly.
a
That's not putting them over the edge.
which is a bummer because yeah,
Yeah.
this team I would love to see them at least have a chance come those playoffs, and we'll see if maybe they can.
Right.
Kind of our consensus here, maybe not so much, but I am very intrigued to see how they play in kind of some more space and pace. I do want
Yeah.
to note some of the options returning as well. Because I mean, I was a big fan of Rebecca Allen stepping into that starting spot. I think
Hmm.
the size, you mentioned the long arms, and the 3 point shot. I love the chance to space out, maybe play with a little bit more pace on
Hmm.
offense. Give Alyssa Thomas the runway that she needs, and so far that's been even when she's out there with the four starters in 39 minutes of action. The other one, Olivia Nelson Ododa, who you mentioned up top, minus 27 in 25 minutes so far this season with those four starters. Hasn't looked great, but not saying that that couldn't work. It's obviously going to be a lot more runway. It's a small sample size. And the last one I checked out was Dejanay Tarrington, which is a plus 22, but that's only in 9 minutes. So,
Hmm. Yep.
and that's in terms of net rating. But I think there are some good options. Personally, Rebecca Allen's my favorite to fill in at that spot.
Yeah. And I think that's what they're gonna probably be sticking with. And I tweeted this, but I still would probably honestly put them as like the third best team in the league with Allen and the
That's
maybe
very
four. I
fair.
wouldn't go any lower than four, I don't think. Um, with Allen in the starting lineup there. Um, but it's just once you get to Vegas and New York, that's where you run into the problems.
Yeah, because I mean it's really mostly unfortunate because of the two big lineups that have come from nothing over in New York and
Mm-hmm.
Las Vegas with Candace Parker heading that way, John Paul Jones and Bruce Stewart in one off season. So you had the bids over in Connecticut. Now it not so much. They're gonna have to figure out a new way to play. I think a little bit.
That is funny. I didn't think about it that way. They went from having too many bigs last year. No one knew who should get the playing time. Now they don't have enough of them. I didn't even think about it that way, but that's funny.
It's an unfortunate reality, I
Yeah.
think, to this point. But I did go and search for the roster. Maybe an Ileana Rupert stepping in as some big man depth. Um,
Mm.
Outside of that, gosh, it really gets tough to go and try and find a trade. There are a lot of bids over in Atlanta, just maybe not a center who would be able to
Yeah.
make an impact like
Yeah,
that.
I'm on the Kaylani Brown train. If there's going to be a trade, that's what I want.
That would be an impressive move
Right.
as
But
Fortinet.
then you run into like, do you want to trade draft picks with how good these drafts are going to be in the next few years? Even though they probably wouldn't have, obviously they're not going to have like a lottery pick or anything, but a late first round pick in the next few drafts are still going to be really good picks. So, then you kind of run into that conundrum of, do you
Yeah,
want to make the trade for maybe a shot to compete with these two teams? Maybe. I don't know.
it is a bit maybe, especially with the talent over on those two teams this
Yeah,
season. It might just be best to move forward.
we got right. Listen, they've somehow, even with all those injuries and all the people they've missed, they've been at least a semifinalist and all those seasons that they've dealt with this. So just
Kayla,
another season.
any closing thoughts for you on Connecticut as an unfortunate episode? It is titled "Not So Sunny in Connecticut," but like any thoughts of hope? They are still 12-4, third in the W. A lot to like.
I still don't think they'll finish. If they finish any lower than fourth, I'd still be surprised. I think they're still going to be a good team. I won't be surprised to see them playing in the semis again. Um, I think I'm excited to see what AT does the rest of the season. I don't know that if she could get an MVP. The MVP, I feel like these last however many years has always gone to someone, the best player on the best team, which they're not going to be the best team this year, obviously. So maybe the narrative's going to change and the voters will, there'll be some voter fatigue between Asia and Stewie or something. But I would love to see her pull it out. Um, Even though it's going to be without Bree, I'm looking forward to the rest of the season.
Yes, yes, we are. We'll let it. We'll take some time for ourselves here. Deal with really just unfortunate news. Bree Jones out for the year, but Connecticut, like you said, Alyssa Thomas, the triple doubles. Can she average a triple double? I mean, eight
The
assists.
average is a triple double. I think you got to give it to her just on principle.
Hey, I mean that's been the thing here recently.
Yeah.
So no, I'm right there with you. Gotta love what you're seeing, even despite the injury news. Kayla, thank you so much for taking the time and joining me today. Had so
Of
much
course.
fun.
Thank you so much for having me.
Well, thank you so much for tuning in. As always, make sure to follow and subscribe to the show on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, and Spotify. Make sure to follow on Twitter and Instagram at APBShow and follow me at the AC Willett 22. Thank you so much for tuning in for a pro basketball show. I am Andrew Willett.